the guys from Ping, they've kind of shown me how much the equipment matters.
I just love that I can hit any shot I kind of want.
We're going to be able to tell some fun stories about what goes on here to help golfers play better golf.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ping Proving Grounds podcast. I'm Shane Bacon, joined as always by Marty Jertz, and we got Dr. Paul Wood with us to go over the new G440 irons, Paul. And I want to start here because beauty matters a lot in terms of golf clubs, and these irons are beautiful. Are these some of the most aesthetically pleasing irons you've made?
I would say so. I know Marty's been designing irons for longer than I have, particularly in a game improvement iron. It's a lot harder to make a bigger iron look sexy, and I feel like we've done a really good job with it and packed it all in there.
Yeah, Marty's showing it off over there. Marty, I mean, you talk about game improvement irons, and of course, you know, you can look at a blueprint iron and it looks very clean.
Yeah.
These look clean, and normally, as Paul said, that doesn't fit in the category all the time.
Yeah, and one thing, Shane, we've talked about a lot is, you know, to make an iron look like this, so it looks like it doesn't have much of a cavity look to it. The cavity's kind of covered. A lot of times what would happen if you put a cover on it or structure there, geometry there, it would inhibit something that we're trying to do with it, which is to get the face to flex. So, Paul, I think we should start there. Tell us a little bit about the face flexing, how we've kind of infused some distance into this iron category.
Yeah, great place to start. And like you said, a lot of the things we do for performance, there's a trade-off with the looks and sound and feel. So a lot of we want to get the face to flex. If we want this iron to go far and to go high, the more we can get the face to flex, the better. So a bigger cavity, a thinner face. But all those things make it want to look like a big cavity back iron, and they make it want to sound like a cowbell. So what's great with the PurFlex badge is it's got, I mean, if you can see on here, it's a nice thick badge. It's got some depth to it. It fills the cavity. It looks amazing. But what we're trying to do is avoid it inhibiting the face flexing. So that's what the PurFlex refers to. This one has 4 different little facets that can all flex independently. It allows the face to do its job and flex. And then it's those vibrations after the impact. Those are the ones that cause the sound. Those are the ones we're trying to damp down. So that initial big vibration that is impact, we want to let that go. The ones after impact are the ones we want to damp out.
Paul, you talk a little bit about flexing, and did you say 4? There's basically four parts of that flex. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, yeah. So each part can kind of move independently, and so it just allows the whole face to bend and flex, and this thing stays out of the way.
Is the point of that, when you're talking about a game improvement iron, is that for somebody that's maybe not hitting in the center of the golf club every time? It allows the club to still, react in a way where the ball might go in, at least in the area they're hoping it goes?
Yeah, and just like a metal would, the ways to increase ball speed are to get the face moving. The more the face is bending and the less the ball is squishing, the more energy stays in the collision and the more impact and the more speed you get. So the more we can get face moving, the better.
Shane, I like to think about our iron designs to simplify it for our fitters and our consumers. Is we have the irons where the player, brings the speed, right? This is Blueprint T, Blueprint S, I-230. I-230 has a little flex in the face to get the ball up in the air. Then we have our irons where we're going to supplement the speed with the club design, and that's right where the 440 stands. This is kind of fun little demo. If you push your thumb in the middle there, do you see how much that badge is flexing up? Paul, tell the story of how we kind of discovered what the badge was doing, right, a few years ago when we ran that test on the Ping Man.
Yeah, so we've known for a while that if we make the face as thin as we can, we'll maximize ball speed. So we tried, let's just take the badge out completely and, put our fingers in our ears because the thing sounds super loud. But then you can start to really quantify like what happens on Ping Man when the badge is there, and then you just pop it out, keep exactly the same swing, see what's changing, where things are moving, and then you start adding things back in and go, what can we add back in to damp out the sound to make it look better that doesn't touch performance? That's the trick.
When you look at G440, who are you looking at in terms of a player? What's the player that's going to look at these irons and put them in the bag?
It's a pretty wide group. I mean, I think, it's game improvement for a reason. Like most of these customers are people looking to get better at the game. Most of these players, like Marty said, don't have a ton of speed. I think that would be a big distinguishing factor. If you're hitting your 7-iron 200 yards, you probably don't need this set of irons. But for the other 99.9% of golfers out there, it's a pretty good spot. But I mean, the range of handicaps, anything from total beginners to certainly single-figure handicap golfers. And we've had some tour players play the G irons. They work for a lot of people. They're not too big.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a little bit of what we talked about in terms of look is, they look great. So if a player was going to maybe throw a big 4-iron in the bag or something like that. I mean, Marty, you were telling me you were testing these irons out and your 7-iron was going 210. I mean, you can get some major distance. Probably not something you're really looking for in terms of what you might play, but when you think about what these irons are capable of doing, I mean, you can hit them a pretty long ways. The one thing I wonder about is spin. When you think about a game improvement iron, something like the G440, how do you, if you get to hit the ball kind of low and you're not hitting the ball super far, how do you still make those irons spin?
So when I was hitting them earlier today, Shane, and I was still, it flew like 205, 210 with the 7-iron, which I don't need that much distance per se with my 7-iron, but my spin rate was still like 6,500, which is only a few hundred RPM down from where I normally am with my blueprint irons. So I think that's a very big component of the 440 iron design. Right now, there's a lot of irons in the market for the high handicap golfer where there's kind of this low spin epidemic a little bit where golfers are, kind of might look good in the indoor fitting bay that your iron's going a little bit further on your simulator, but they go play golf and their spin rate with a 7-iron's 4,500 or something. We've definitely seen that. I've seen that when I've played in pro-ams.
So when you're saying that, I mean, that's an iron that, let's say you're hitting a 6-iron into a green, that's landing on the front of the green and rolling off the back of the green. Like you're getting there's no capability of actually stopping that on the green.
We like to call it stopping power.
Right.
Which is, we can quantify this a bunch of different ways. Kind of your peak height, your land angle, a combination of those things. We have a lot of great fitting tools for this. But that was a big priority in the 440 is, hey, we want this thing to compete from a distance standpoint. It is actually really good to help somebody hit a 7-iron instead of a 6-iron from that spot, but let's still have that ball be able to stop the ball on the green. So, Paul, tell us a little bit about like kind of the engineering meat and potatoes that allows that to happen in the 440 iron.
Yeah, so, one of those things is being able to go really thin in the face, and obviously by doing that, we get more ball speed. More ball speed is more distance. The other major thing we've done in this iron set is to bring the center of mass down, and that's a theme with the whole G440 line. And there's a trade-off, as you move the center of mass down, you're getting that center of mass more in line with where impact is. You're getting a better energy transfer, and again, more distance. It lets you go a little higher. The trade-off often is with forgiveness. And so as you're moving mass down, it's going slightly counter to moving mass out sometimes. And it all depends where you're starting from. So we've spent the last 65 years engineering forgiveness into the irons. We can afford to make a little bit of a trade-off, go down in center of mass and still have the most forgiving iron out there. But relative to the G430, this goes just that little bit higher, which, as you know, we can get stopping power from spin or we can get it from height or both. And we're doing a little bit of both with this iron.
Yep.
I mean, is this feedback you guys get from people that play ping? I'd love for the ball to spin a little bit more with the game improvement level iron.
Yeah, I think it depends who you talk to. I think the average consumer doesn't frame it like that. They say I want to be able to hit it further, but still have the ball stop on the green.
Okay.
They're not necessarily articulating it in terms of I would like
they don't know all the Marty terms.
Yeah, exactly.
I got them dialed in.
So we do as much interpreting what that means to us in terms of launch and spin. But yeah, exactly. I think that's something we've heard, that when they're buying the irons, they want them to be competitive. And like Marty said, our goal here is not to make the longest 7-iron, but we want to make a long 7-iron that is the most functional on the course and helps you stop it near the hole.
So Paul brings up a very good point. If you increase ball speed alone and keep the same initial launch and same spin rate, you're going to achieve a higher peak height and more stopping power. That's one of the benefits. It's like hybrids. Generally, if you tested a hybrid versus a long iron, it will launch. The initial launch will be slightly lower quite often.
Interesting.
But it will end up going way higher. So people perceive that it launches higher, but it's really more about the peak height and the stopping power, right, Paul?
Yeah, what you see is when you look up how high is the ball in the sky, you're
Right.
not seeing the launch angle as much.
How about the new length progression with the G irons?
Yeah, so we've basically squeezed slightly longer gaps from starting at the 7-iron, 7 and 6, 6 and 5, 5 and 4, and the whole goal there was, we know that. Talking of feedback from this customer, most of these players struggle to get the distance out of a 5-iron or a 4-iron that they would like, or maybe they used to get. So doing everything we can to help that customer get a little more functional gaps. So what we've done is we've gone from 5/8 inch length increments to 3/4. It's not a huge change, but it adds up once you get to like the 6 iron, the 5, the 4. And that's just enough. A little bit of extra length is giving you just a little more speed, a little more height, a little more distance. And now if we gave that length progression to Marty, you'd start to get gaps that are too big.
Yeah.
Because you have so much speed to start with. But in the hands of someone who's the core audience for this, that just helps go from not enough gap to functional.
So we got a 1/2 inch increment in length from 7 iron and up, then now 3/4.
3/4.
And we've also seen, Shane, we've talked about it on the pod a lot, even with the tour players playing a lot of high lofted fairway woods and things of this nature. That length progression helps blend also a little bit with either hybrids or high lofted fairway woods.
Yeah, exactly. A hybrid's a little bit of a jump from where the irons are, and then the fairway wood's quite a bit more again. So this just helps bridge that gap a little more.
I mean, Marty, I was wondering about blended sets. I mean, it feels like this could play into some of the players out there that are leaning towards a blended set. I mean, I know that's been extremely popular for the last few years with Ping in particular, is not just sticking to 1 iron in your bag, but potentially going 2 and 3 different irons in your bag.
Yeah, definitely. I think we really design our 230 blueprints to kind of be super easy to do with that, but with the 440, like a 4 or 5 iron would be an awesome kind of blended set because of the launch, the height, and now the look and feel. I mean, every year we launch a G iron, I think they get better looking, and this is going to be the best looking yet, obviously.
I mean, in the summer, by the way, when it gets kind of hot here in Arizona, I'm going to imagine you throwing like the 3 iron in there that goes about 285 and never even have to hit driver. I could see that right up your alley. But, I mean, that is one of the benefits of having so many options. I mean, when you think about the options, and you stated earlier, I mean, kind of going through some of the irons that Ping has is – you could lean into something like that, even if you were a great player. And, Paul, I know you mentioned earlier, I mean, it's not exactly specific to a certain golfer out there, but multiple golfers could play multiple irons and potentially lean into the 440.
100%. Like we said, they're not that big. They don't have a huge bulky top rail. They look the part. So I think there's a lot of golfers who could try them and find they work really well.
Paul, let's talk a little bit about some of the things we've learned about this customer from our Arcos data and our Arcos partnership. You know, what are some of the insights we've seen that have helped inform decisions we've made, whether it's groove design or finish, or where are they are they in the rough from a certain spot, or the fairway from our Arcos data? Can you tell us a few examples here?
Yeah, no, now you're speaking my language. This is for those who
Paul's
don't
like
know,
Arcos data. Let's go.
I'm a mathematician, so this is my kind of thing. So in our Arcos data set, you've got this wonderful experiment of thousands of players playing these kind of iron sets, and we just look at where are they going on the course, what are they doing, and like you said, some simple things we can do are look at, okay, for everyone playing G430 irons, what are their average gaps? Where are they short? Where are they starting to fall off in terms of they don't hit the 4 iron anywhere near as far as they think they do. Are we seeing missed tendencies left and right? A big one, like you mentioned, is where are they hitting from? So we can look at how often are they in the fairway, how often are they in the rough, how often are they off a tee? I mean, one thing that we talked about, which is when you think about it, it makes sense, but we'd never really thought about it, was like with a 7 iron in hand, you're almost equally likely to be in the fairway, in the rough, or hitting off a tee, because there's a bunch of par 3s out there that you may well be hitting a 7 iron. Nobody hits every fairway, and the average golfer hits maybe half of fairways. So it makes a ton of sense that we need that iron to be functional, not just from the fairway where we do a lot of testing, but out of the rough, which then brings in, that makes it really important to have the best groove profile we possibly can. Off a tee, we need to know how it performs like high on the face as well as in the middle of the face, all that kind of stuff. So Arcos has been great for that. And when you're aggregating over 100 million shots in the database, some really interesting stuff pops out.
Paul, we talk a lot about sound in terms of golf clubs, and I feel like most of the time we focus the conversation around woods and drivers. How important is sound when you're designing a new iron? Yeah,
I'd argue it's every bit as important, if not more important in some ways. It just like with metal woods, everyone has their tastes, what sounds good, what doesn't, but it's not just what's pleasing, right? If it was just about making a pleasing sound, we'd make a perfect A note or something, right? It's more about matching up the expectations of what you think is going to happen and what happened to inform the next shot, right? So we're using that feedback when we're making the next golf shot, right? You want to know, like, do I get some information about where I hit that on the face? Do I does the sound match up with my expectation of what just happened? So it's not just a like-dislike. It's actually helping you play better golf.
Interesting. I mean, it's a part of feel, right? Like sound is a part of your feel.
Sound and feel are pretty much interchangeable. And often when people say feel, they mean sound,
right,
and vice versa. So fascinating topic and totally different wing of engineering, and a lot of it's psychology, but a lot of it's what you describe as sound isn't necessarily matching the physics of the sound. When you say it's loud, that doesn't necessarily mean decibels. That might mean frequency, or it might mean how much the sound is ringing out. And that's our job to figure out. When you say, I don't like it, it's loud, what does that actually mean in the physics?
Right. What are you trying to actually tell me?
Exactly.
I mean, Marty, this is a big thing you've talked about in terms of practice. You're
Yeah.
practicing without stuff in your ears because sound is such an important part of when you're actually playing golf. Like, you play golf against your buddies, you don't have AirPods in, right? And I mean, when you're practicing, if you're not listening to the golf shot, you might not be getting exactly what you're trying to get out of it.
Yeah. It's a good home experiment if you want to see if you can feel the difference between two clubs or two putters. Put noise-canceling headphones on and try to discern a feel difference, and you'll find out for yourself that, it's probably mostly sound that you're just driving your feel.
Marty, I'm excited for your family to send us notes about how they come into you, and you got the air-canceling things and the sim trying to hit different shots.
Doing research over here.
I promise you have done it. If anybody's done it, it's been you.
Paul, let's talk a little bit about the shafts. So as part of going longer in the long irons, some that we've had a few versions of was a shaft technology called AWT, which stands for ascending weight technology. A lot of the shafts out there are actually heavier in the long irons and then get lighter in the short irons. AWT kind of does the opposite. Tell us about the genesis of that shaft family in the new AWT 3.0.
Yeah, this has been fun. Like you mentioned, typically when you're designing a set of steel shafts, right, the longest shaft, which would be the longest iron, would be the heaviest. And as you start chopping that shaft down, it would be the lightest. So it makes sense that in the early days, all iron shafts were descending weight. As you went from the 3-iron to the wedge, they got lighter. But actually, when you look at the whole rest of the set, the lightest shaft in the bag is the driver, where we're trying to squeeze as much speed out of it as possible and get the ball up in the air. The heaviest shaft in the bag is your wedge shaft, where we're trying to be all about control. We're not trying to squeeze out more speed. So just intuitively, and I think ascending weight was your idea in the first place, right?
Descending weight didn't make sense.
Exactly. and we had that conversation in 2009 or something. It just makes sense to try to blend the weight of the shaft for what you're trying to do, which is in the long iron, you want to get more speed and get the ball up in the air. A lighter shaft helps with that. And in the wedge, you're trying to get more control, more precision, and a heavier shaft helps with that. The challenge is it's not easy to make steel shafts in this ascending weight fashion. I think we did a good job with our first AWT, but it's really hard to make them all feel similar.
Mm-hmm.
In AWT2, we did a great job making them feel great, and so that's been hard to beat for a long time. This is the year we finally feel like we have a new shaft that's new and improved over AWT2. So we've just extended that ascending weight technology. Now it's on average about a 3-gram difference from shaft to shaft. So like going from the 6 to the 7 is a 3-gram difference, whereas in the AWT2, it's about 2 grams. So kept it simple there. And just what that means is we've been able to blend that even better. So particularly in the long irons there, they still have the stiffness that you need, but they're lighter than they are in the previous irons. So they're easier to get the ball up in the air. Our testing shows more ball speed, higher launch, just helps with more distance in the long irons.
Paul, it's 2025, and yet we can't get away from the I-2, the wedge. You think about it continuing to be a part of the family. I know it's a part of the 440 as well.
Yes. So one of the bits of research, in fact, partly inspired by our Arcos research, partly inspired by consumer research, is this customer in general is telling us they really want more help in bunkers with their sand wedge. Well, what better club has there been out there than the I2 sand wedge?
The GOAT, yeah.
And so there's a lot of aspects of the sand wedge in this set that are inspired by. I wouldn't say it's a complete recreation of the I2, but as you look down at it, you'll see some of those features that made it so good in the bunker. We've incorporated some of the shaping of the head, the necking of the hosel. That has a distinct look, but it's there for a reason. It goes through the sand better than a traditional hosel. So we've incorporated those to maximize how easy it is to get these shots out of the bunker.
Marty, it's always crazy to me as we go into new technology, new clubs at Ping, how you guys and everybody kind of behind the scenes will touch history. We'll go back 20, 30 years and find, little nods that work in today's technology and today's golf clubs manufacturing. You kind of think about the history. It never really goes away.
Yeah, even getting to the length progressions. I mean, Karsten built that into the original I2s was non-linear lengths.
Right.
It didn't make sense to him. He was charting things out. He was charting lofts versus length instead of club number versus length. So some of these ideas are, just kind of old ideas applied to modern technology.
Old ideas, but you can use all the technology now and make them sing,
One of the big ones, Shane, I'm excited about is bringing our kind of trajectory tuning lobe system to our fitting environment. So now with the AFS, we call it AFS 3D, and 3D stands for three-dimensional fitting. We can fit multiple color codes or lie angle and do power spec in one fitting head. So customers are going to be able to play around with color code, and it looks a lot better with the sleeve on it, and be able to experience a power spec. And actually with the 440, we also have a retro spec fitting heads in our AFS fitting cart. So Paul, tell us a little bit about, fitting for spin rates, who might be a good candidate for retro, who might be a good candidate for power.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, we've seen this, we build the standard specs of the G irons to the middle of the bell curve, right?
Yep.
That's kind of the whole point. There's a population out there, we fit the middle of that bell curve, but then there's plenty of people on the two ends of that bell curve. And interestingly enough, like myself and my dad would be good examples of two ends of that spectrum. I hit the ball really high. I have a decent amount of speed, but I'm not like you guys. But I'm a good candidate for power spec because I'm hitting the ball high, I'm getting a lot of spin. And so actually I can increase distance quite a bit without losing stopping power because I'm at the high stopping power end of the spectrum. So power spec for me just brings it down a little, brings the spin down from high to medium, and everything's good. My dad's the opposite. He's very hands forward. He doesn't have a lot of speed, but the ball doesn't go high. And so for him, he actually, like, going up in loft actually helps him gain distance, even in a 7-iron.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah.
Because he's low spin, like low enough launch angle that actually going up in loft is helping him gain distance. Now that's not always the case. Sometimes it's really a stopping power versus distance trade-off. But there's plenty of people out there. When you talk a lot to coaches and you say how many players need to launch the ball a bunch higher, there'll be a lot of hands raised.
Paul, I mean, you're screaming what we scream a lot on this podcast: get fit. I mean, it seems like, it's a big part of this. I mean, you're explaining it as well, Marty. I mean, it seems like there's no iron maybe that Ping produces that's more important to get fit than the 440.
Yeah, and I just love that we're not just fitting for lie angle, right? We're not just fitting for left right. We're fitting for spin because, Paul, Paul's shallow. You rarely take a divot, right, with your irons, right? So he just doesn't have as much shaft lean in his dynamics. My father-in-law is very similar to your dad. It sounds like a decent amount of shaft lean,
Right.
And so you're not going to change those swings. You got to fit the club to those, and because we custom build all of these here, we loft and lie them all. So it's no extra cost to get your irons dialed in and fit your spin window. And we have a lot of great fitting tools and Copilot and charts and things of that nature to help guide our fitters.
Marty, I love that you guys all know each other's golf swings. It's like kind of cute, You're like, I know how you swing it. I know how far Marty hits it. And it feels like it's across the board. Everybody kind of knows everybody's golf game.
I mean, we're right here where we do the player testing, and quite often you'll be out and I'll be doing my player test and Marty stood next to me doing his, and then suddenly I feel a lot more self-conscious about my swing. But it's kind of fun. We might have 3 tests going at the same time, and you'll watch each other doing the tests and hitting good shots, hitting bad shots.
How does player testing work for game improvement irons? Because obviously, if you think about something with a blueprint, you'd go to tour players. I mean, you'd go to Victor Hovland and say, how does this look? How does this feel? Things like that. Who are you approaching in terms of testing out a game improvement iron?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we still will utilize people like Marty, but obviously he's not the target market. But we'll utilize the fact that he has a super consistent swing, and we can look at differences. We're testing out 2 shafts, and we want to know what's the true difference between those shafts. We get more repeatable data from a tour player or someone like a Marty. But we do as much of our final testing as possible with the target audience. So people of the swing speed range, the handicap range. And you collect more data. It's often a little bit noisier data, but you need to test with the real
people that are
golfers.
going to use
exactly.
it, right? The
So
people
we'll
that are going
do
to want to be interested in
so
it.
exactly. We'll do both, but we end up testing a wider pool of players with game improvement because the swings are less repeatable.
The G440 iron, as we mentioned off the top, it looks awesome. Obviously, it seems like it's got a lot of opportunity for a widespread group of players. And, I mean, it's not just, as you mentioned, not just the player that hits it short. It could be for any player out there that might be looking for something. And as you said, there's spectrums as well for different types of players.
Yeah, 100%. And every year, like we're very proud of all the clubs we do, but there's always a bit of a favorite in there of which one do we think we really nailed it this year. You know, I think you could argue with the 430 line, the driver was that. With the 440, I think a lot of us feel like the iron is the superstar here.
Marty, you feel that way?
It's hard to. Oh man, it's always hard to pick a favorite.
I was going to say, you're always going to lean driver. I see you over there.
I'm gonna go out on a limb. I think the hybrid actually.
Okay.
Because
Interesting.
they're all. I mean, you can't pick.
It's like
a
picking a
winner.
favorite kid.
Yeah, but the hybrid launches a little higher, goes a little bit higher. I think hybrid's going to be the little mini sleeper of the line, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that is for months to come to where we really figure out which club's everybody's favorite. But for now, we have some really, really good ones. Paul, we always appreciate the time. The irons look great, and we always appreciate the insight.
Thank you.
This is the Ping Proving Grounds podcast.